Well, I think it's getting even more extreme than we have the big 7 and the next 10 cities. For example, if you want to have a newly specified rented building with Siemens as an anchor tenant, you don't have to go to Munich anymore because they have closed tens of thousands of units in Munich. You can't even go to Nuremberg anymore because they don't go to Nuremberg. They put their whole healthcare operations to a tiny city called Forchheim. Yeah? And there they are building new office properties big time. I only know that because we happen to own a retail warehouse in Forchheim that is performing extremely well. So it will be very hard to get the international investor universe to invest into Siemens properties in Forchheim, I guess. But from the German end and from Germanic understanding and also of the polycentric nature of our country, I think we will find enough German capital that are supporting those investments in smaller cities. Everybody of us knows that, for example, Adidas and Puma always operated from Herzogenaurach, from the Erlangen area there, and they will always stay there. So if you want to have that covenant in your portfolio, you have to go to those tiny little B and C cities, and the German investors will be the first to understand that you have to go outside the top 7 and even further beyond. And I think that will be a trend in the future, because in those regions, this is where the qualified employees live and will continue to live, and this is why they have to stay in those locations in order to have the qualified workforce. Right?
And do you think this can be a product for institutional money if somebody's arranging a portfolio, even though they're small lot sizes, presumably a lot of these, is that a product that could be available to institutional money? Would it be of interest, or is it really a domestic local play for German investors?
It is for institutional money, but for Germanic institutional money. We can't convince our, for example, Canadian or Australian clients to do those investments. They believe more if it comes to the office sector, for example. Of course, you can explain the polycentric nature of Germany more on the retail end and on the logistic end, where you don't need the big names. But for office properties, you rather need the big names of the cities, and I think it will take a long while to convince people to invest in office properties in cities like Forchheim.
The German investors understand quite clearly that they have to go to Herzogenaurach, Forchheim, these smaller cities, but you have to be aware of, if you buy these buildings in Forchheim for Siemens, what's happening if the lease of Siemens expires? They might have a 10-15 year lease on, but what's happening if the lease expires? You've seen a lot of these things happening, and I think also the investor realized that these bigger single tenant buildings are possibly not, and I think the discussion is out in the community again. Is this really a core product if you have a 15-year lease single tenant in a not central location? And how do you deal with it after let's say 10-12 years when you know the lease expires? And we all recognize that these global companies, if it's their headquarters city, you can be quite confident they are staying. So if you're around Herzogenaurach, that Adidas or Puma will stay in the buildings, that's very likely. But if Siemens, they always decide on a new structure, and so you always have to be aware of what risk you are taking. You might have a good investment for the first 12 years, but after 12 years you have to work hard, and depending on what's happening, you just have to look at what Deutsche Telekom did with a lot of their assets they sold off. Some of them are back on the market. The question is what's happening with them, because they're very hard to multi-let, and normally most of the time you don't have the structure down there. So I think that's something you have to really keep in mind. If you go to smaller cities, the buildings have to be suitable for the market you're operating in, and possibly they have to be able to be multi-let and on that broader base.